Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar on the Technology Gateway Technology Centre's Capital Call. My name is Mark Whelan from Enterprise Ireland. I'll be your host and presenter today. And the intention really is just to give you some background on the programme, the changes that have been made to the programme recently, how they impact on applications, and also to answer any questions people have. So you should see on the pop-up menu that you have that there is a questions tab where you can write down questions at any point through the presentation, the webinar, and I will be able to see them. And where relevant, I'll try and answer them as we go along, but if not, I'll deal with them all at the end where we have a Q&A session. The event is being recorded, so if people come in late or miss it, they'll have a chance to go back and do that. I'm going to turn off my webcam just so you can see the full screen as we go through, and it should probably take about 30 minutes at the most of my presentation, then we can spend as much time as we need for Q&A. So the agenda is to go through the call aims and the eligibility, changes to the current program that we've made over the previous one. So that's the addition of what we're calling Stream 2. We'll discuss how Stream 2 industry need can be demonstrated. We'll talk about the assessment process and slight changes that have been made. Also about how we rank applications. So in the past we haven't had to do this, but where there is insufficient budget, anything that has been approved for funding will be ranked, and in the case where there, as I said, insufficient budget, either in total or immediately, we will start funding from the top down. In the 2020 call, we did have a reserve list based on those rankings, but everything that was on the reserve list was also funded. Go through terms and conditions. There just are some slight changes, well, not changes, but some points I want to reiterate for people there. Talk about the lessons not learned. I suppose there's certain people will have heard me bleat on about and really bleat on about it a lot. You know, there is a simple way of getting funded here, and that is to answer the question that's asked. And unfortunately, people have not learned that lesson yet. So we'll go through that again. And then, as I said, there's opportunities for questions and answers. So the aim of the call, ideally, it's about getting more companies engaged in R&D and more companies to interact with the technology gateways and the technology centres. We have some areas listed there that show the kind of things that we're interested in funding. It's not an exhaustive list, and if it's not on that list, it doesn't mean you won't get funded. Similarly, if it's on that list, doesn't mean you will be funded. But the idea is to look at enhanced technology validation capabilities, test beds, and other areas. In terms of applications, as I said, there are 2 streams. I'll go through those in a while. But there are a maximum of 3 applications allowed per gateway or per technology centre. Each must be on its own individual form, obviously. And if you're applying for a suite of equipment, you need to justify the suite as a whole rather than the individual pieces of equipment, if that makes sense. In the event where it's a technology centre and maybe it's a distributed member and not the host of the technology centre that's applying, it's that host institution of the equipment that should be the person providing the signatures and in effect the application. And you also must state what stream you're applying under. And there's also a change this year that if you are resubmitting an application from past call, that you have to identify that and summarize the changes and how you've reacted to the feedback. So let's say eligibility is restricted to members of the Technology Gateway and Technology Centres programs. You must be able to demonstrate strong track record in the area that you are applying. And the host institution must declare, and this is why it's the host of the equipment that must sign that they will service, maintain the equipment to the necessary standards and provide space for it. Individual applications are restricted to a minimum of 25,000. We don't want really small items, and no more than 250,000 in the general sense. However, we do consider items that are worth more than 200 or cost more than 250,000, but you have to justify that additional cost. And again, I suppose that's an area where people have fallen down in the past. They've put in very strong applications, but they haven't identified that the amount they're looking for is more than 250,000, and they haven't provided an explanation or a justification for that. And also in the case of the technology centres, given that your funding is approved on a business plan, the equipment you're looking for shouldn't have been part of that approved business plan. So it should be new equipment, for want of a better word, that is either helping you look at different areas or that may attract extra membership into the centre. So key changes over the previous programs is the inclusion of Stream 2. So when you're filling in the application form, you need to tick whether you're filling in Stream 1 or Stream 2. Stream 1 is the, for want of a better word, existing structure that we've been using, where the equipment has a well-established industry need and is commonly used for the specific applications we're talking about. And the application form hasn't changed in that sense for Stream 1. Stream 2, equipment that is either considered new or leading edge, and I'll talk about how we describe that in a moment. It's not to be confused with equipment that industry don't need or don't want, that is research focused. Enterprise Ireland are an enterprise development agency, so obviously what we're looking for out of this is increased interaction with industry. So while lots of equipment is necessary for research, and there's no debate about that, we're interested in the industry need rather than the research need, if that makes sense. Also included is, as I said, the question on a resubmission, and you're requested to summarise how that previous feedback has been addressed. So if you're filling that out, please make sure you do that. The scoring scheme has also changed slightly. When we started back in 2019, the first call was just for the Institute's technology. So to ensure that we were funding areas and groups that had a strong industrial track record, that there was 20 out of 100 for the track record. Given it's now just the gateways and the centres, that's a bit of an anomaly. So we've reduced the track record from 20 down to 10 and increased the score for impact on the companies from 15 to 25. That's across both streams. You'll see also there just the ranking criteria, how we go through those. They haven't changed, and that they will remain the same. So that's really just in writing what I talked about there. So as I said, Stream 1 stays as it is. It's all about proving the industry need and why industry want that. Stream 2 is focusing on the newer equipment or the leading edge equipment. So the key questions we're looking for you to answer in terms of that in making your application is: who's impacted by this technology? What is going to change or improve with this technology? And that's in terms of the companies we're looking for, but also from the research point of view. But specifically in section 3, when you're answering section 3, the impact is the impact on the companies. When are industry going to implement this technology? So obviously if it's new, we don't expect it to be in the first 3, 6, 9 months. But similarly, we don't expect it to be 2, 3, 4 years out. And as I said again, where will we see this impact? So in summary, what we're looking for is a justification as to why this should be funded, and I suppose that's what we do in everything. So the focus, what's driving the need for the technology? So the specific questions that you'd be asked to address are: what are the shortcomings in the existing technology? What are the unknowns with the new technology or the new equipment? So are there risks associated with it, and how would you define those? And what are the assumptions you're making around that? And how long is it likely before that technology becomes the mainstream and what you're applying it for? What are the likely impacts on industry of the new technology? How will it help develop new processes or new services or new products? How would it improve existing products, processes, and services? Or is it a completely disruptive technology? And then how easy can that technology be adopted by industry? So while it might be very interesting for industry, if it's a complete rip-up of all their structures and plants and equipment, it might not be the most suitable thing for them to apply in the immediate future. So we're looking also for you to be able to tell us, what's the integration of equipment with new plants and processes in terms of costs and time. And I suppose that's what the industry will be telling us in their part of the application process. So to that point, strand 2 or stream 2 will be slightly different in that the companies are also asked to contribute to the application in this sense, and we will require a minimum of 3, and if you're lucky enough to have lots of interested companies, a maximum of 5 who fill out section 3, and that's the justification of the industry need. I've written there instead of letters of support, and that's because We tend to find that applicants become lazy if they include letters of support, in that they rely on the information that's in the letters of support rather than actually articulating it in the sections where the questions are asked. Assessors are asked, well, they're not asked to read letters of support, and they don't have to take them into account because we don't request them. And if something is not written in section 3 and it's in the letter of support, I'm afraid that doesn't get scored. So you need to make sure that whatever you're putting in strand 1, I suppose this is most important, is written on the piece of paper, because that's all the assessors can judge. So for section 3, the 3 companies are asked to fill out in approximately 3.5 pages. And again, we ask you not to provide us 35 pages with this. They are short and succinct questions. And I suppose part of the problem some people have fallen into in the past is they think we're looking for more than we're asking for. We're not. If you can provide a good answer in 1 page, that's what we want. And in fairness, if you're providing 2 or 3 pages in any of these sections, it's obviously not a good answer. So, I mean, it's an easy way of knowing that. So what's driving the need for the company? And what's the shortcomings in the existing technology that is driving that need? So 1 page on that. What's the likely impact on the company? Will it help develop new or improved products, processes, or services? Or is it a completely disruptive technology? Then how easily can that be adopted by the companies in terms of integration, skill levels, qualifications? And also, how long is it before they think that becomes mainstream, and are there barriers to implementation? So they're not very difficult questions, but we need a minimum of 3 companies, and you need to name who the companies are, obviously, and the people in the companies and their positions who's providing that input. The assessment process then is the same across both. At least 1 independent external reviewer and a number of internal Enterprise Ireland staff. Applications are scored against each of the criteria that I've shown earlier. An applicant must receive a minimum of 70% on the industrial need, regardless of other scores, to get funded. And then the total pass mark is 70%. If you achieve those, you then get recommended for funding. So that recommendation goes to the IRCC. And in a situation where we have more recommendations, or the value of the recommendations is higher than the budget we have, we then rank everybody. So that's the marking scheme for the ranking you see on the bottom there. And again, that's as I showed earlier on. And what we particularly looking for there, I suppose, is criticality of equipment and novelty of equipment. They're the 2 things that are different. For guidance, definition of capital, we have another program called the Capital Investment Initiative, and we've just taken this information there to show you and to give you an idea of what is and isn't. This is not exhaustive, and it's also not definitive because it's a different program. So what I'd say to you is, if you are unsure, please give me a call or send me an email, and we can discuss what it is you're looking for. Again, just some background information. I don't propose to go through that on what's eligible and ineligible. 1 point I will make that's been brought up on a number of occasions recently by assessors is large computing equipment infrastructure. It's really not something that we are keen on funding and haven't funded unless there's an excellent justification on the basis that a lot of that infrastructure is available on the cloud. And there's definitely I suppose a policy decision that where possible, stuff like that should be on the cloud rather than investing large amounts of money in infrastructure that goes out of date very, very quickly. And again, look, if that is something that you're interested in, please talk to me before you put in an application form. If approved under funding, the host is confirming that it will provide the necessary space for equipment to maintain and service it. So that there is a section that the host has to sign for this, and this is to make sure that you're abiding by these and it's upfront and you know this. Previously, we had listed the LIR, the large items research equipment database, and the HEA haven't unfortunately been able to keep that up to date. So we will be developing our own database of equipment that has been funded under the capital call for the last number of years, and putting that up online with the view maybe that's a starting point for that again. So you'll be requested to put stuff up there in the future. We will obviously be putting the items that we have funded on there ourselves to start. To date, there have been 119 items funded under this call. Hosts are committing to adopt the national principles of access to research equipment, and the link is there, and also agreeing to list equipment and access principles on your institution's website. And most importantly, also signing up to charge companies the full economic cost, for want of a better word, of the equipment, with a margin included in that. And that's mainly for state aid rules to ensure that we're not undercutting commercial providers or other providers of this equipment. I have had applicants in the past put in standard hourly rates for equipment. And if those standard hourly rates are justified by the full economic value, that's fine. But a lot of them have appeared to be well under the cost of that. So in that sense, that's not appropriate. And if you're doing that, you'll need to change that and make sure that they are at the full economic cost. Call details. So as I said, open to both technology centres and technology gateways. Closing date is the Wednesday, 18th of August at noon. And it's the time at which the file arrives into our servers, not the time you sent it, unfortunately. So please make sure you don't wait till 2 minutes to 12 to send it. Applications should be emailed to that address. There's no need to send a hard copy this time. Our offices are closed, so no need to do that. The one single soft copy is enough, as long as there are copies of signatures on that. Any queries to myself? The expectation is that we will be bringing recommendations to the Industrial Research and Commercialisation Committee on the 22nd of August. And the reason we're having this second call is that we've been being provided with an additional budget this year on the basis that we can actually spend it this year. So that means all contracts must be signed and approved through our contracts unit by the 1st of December at the very latest, so we can release those monies in 2021. That doesn't mean, obviously, that you have to have bought the equipment. So if you're new to this, what happens is that on signing of the contracts, we provide a 70% upfront stage one payment, and that's what we're talking about here. Something that's come up, I wanted just to bring to people's attention on this now also, and it's applied since 2019, obviously, is contingent liability. It's in the grant scheme that you'll see that in clause 3J. And what contingent liability means is basically that in signing up for this and receiving the grant, that you are saying that you will keep this equipment for 5 years from the date of purchase. So what that means in reality is that you have to inform us if you dispose of, move off site, or sell the equipment within 5 years. And depending which of those happens, you might have to repay some or all of the grant. So for the gateways and the centre staff, you'll see this coming up shortly, that in your quarterly reports, you'll be asked just to make those declarations. So it's a once off, you fill out this form just with the details of it, and you resend it every quarter. And you would select a yes or no to these answers, and we only really have to react to it if there is a no. But we're also asking for a record of equipment usage. So again, to be clear, this is about fulfilling an industry need. So in an audit by the Controller of Auditor General recently, one of the things they did ask was, how do we ensure that we know that the equipment that we are funding and have funded is being utilised for the purposes it was funded. So you will start to see these again if you are funded or have been funded in the past. So just like a list of the equipment, what the grant, for want of a better word, value was, the date it was operational, what companies are using it, how they're funding it, and the value of that. So that's something that you'll see individually through the gateways and the centres. And I suppose to the important stuff and the crux of this, the lessons not learned. And people who unfortunately know me and have to deal with me a lot will know that I bleed on about this all the time, but it is just the most simplistic way to ensure you do or don't get funded, and that's read the question and answer the question that you're asked, not the one that's in your head. Plenty of times I've given feedback to applicants and said, I answered that question. Look, if the 2 or 3 assessors don't think you answered it, you didn't. So the other mistake people make is that we provide bullet point guidance and we provide the questions in the form, and they delete them to save 2 or 3 lines to tell us 2 or 3 extra lines of information that they think are important, and by doing so end up not answering the question. And then worse, they give it to a colleague to read. The colleague who go to read them doesn't see the points that were deleted and thinks, oh yeah, that answers that question. but they're not aware that another question has been deleted. And specifically in the value over 250,000, we've seen that quite frequently, people deleting that, requesting more than 250,000 and not addressing the issue. So again, remember who your audience is. It's only 2 or 3 assessors. They're trying to help you. They're trying to make sure you can get funded. It's up to you not to give them reasons to say no. So please read the question, read it again, and then answer the one that we ask you, okay? And that goes to simple things like question 1, describe the equipment. That's not an invitation to write a 2-page technical summary on the equipment, why this piece of equipment is better than that piece of equipment. We simply want you to describe the equipment being requested so that as this assessor starts to read the application form, they know what it is you're talking about. It really is for no other reason. So the important thing, remember always, is that you're trying to tell the assessor who wants it, why do they want it, and what impact it will have on them. And unfortunately, if you don't do that clearly enough, you're not going to get funded. But the flip side is that if you can do that, the chances are you will get funded. Please don't include references to international market resources and reports. We see lots of that. Oh, there's a market value of 1 billion in the next 5 years. That doesn't prove that there's an industry need locally to you for that piece of equipment. And when assessors start to see that, they immediately switch off. And if that's the first thing you read in an assessment, it's an uphill struggle after that to get funded. We also don't ask for essays on the technology proposed, so please don't provide them. Letters of support, the ones we see are usually way too generic, and the information then, as I said, doesn't get included into the body of the application, so it can't be scored. We also see examples of what's included there. An email sent as a letter of support, and the subject of the email was, please send this to Enterprise Ireland, do you want to make any changes? We've all been around the system. We all know that in lots of occasions you provide sample letters of support and ask companies to do them. So in that sense, I mean, please don't do it. It's wasting your time and their time. For Strand 2, it is much more important now that they fill out the application and that they put in the right details in that. And please go back and read it. I mean, again, in the last call, we had references to a large company in Longford whose name I can't remember, and that's verbatim text that we cut from an application, or reminders to yourself that, oh, I must finish this TBC Thursday evening. So please make sure you do get somebody else to read it and either give them a blank application form or don't delete anything off it so they know that you are actually responding to the questions that have been asked. And again, some extra polite requests on behalf of the assessors: stick to the page count. Assessors are told to stop reading after the maximum count, and if you keep going on, they're under no obligation to read it. Answer the question asked, and simple things like in the budget in question 6, you'd be amazed the number of people who don't fill out the application request total box. If we wanted to be really pedantic, if you don't fill that out, you're not filling out the assessment form completely. Just please look at it and do everything you're asked. So in section 3, this is the most important section of the application form. You're asked to tell us who wants the equipment and why. So what good applications do is include a table. So we've put a table in now in the application form. That doesn't mean you just blindly follow that and that's enough information. A table without backup information is insufficient. We also just don't expect answers like, we're going to generate 3 additional innovation partnerships worth 300,000. There needs to be a lot more information and background than just comments like that. If that is what it's going to do, who are the companies, what's the value of the individual ones, when are they likely to happen, what is the work that you're going to do? That's the kind of detail that we need and expect to see in that section. So before I open it up to anybody else, just some of the obvious questions we've been asked before, so I'll cover them. So for Tech Centres, who's the applicant? It's the institution where the equipment is being hosted. Again, for Tech Centres, it was in section 5, what's the definition of the research group? For the track record, it is the technology centre. And again, if it's a track record, is it the individual PI or the technology centre/gateway? It's the centre/gateway. And could a PI who's no longer funded in a centre apply under the call? Yes, but in effect, the gateway centre director or manager is signing off on that application, and it obviously counts as one of their quota. So that's what I had to go through. I hope that's being useful. Again, I would suggest to people, if you have individual questions, feel free to ask them either now or privately with me. So as I said, there is the opportunity there to you to ask questions online. So if people want to start doing that, I can answer them as we go along. I'll give it. There's none there. I'll give it a minute or two to allow people to add any. And look, if they don't come up, I'm more than happy to answer questions via email. That's probably the easiest way to do it, so we can have them in writing. So it's difficult to see the difference between Stream 1 and Stream 2 given the amount of industry support that's being requested in the documents. I suppose it's the nature of the equipment rather than the supporting information we're looking for. It's again that idea of new equipment. We struggled as to whether we should put in an example to try and help people look at the difference. And I've had a number of examples given in, and I've been loath to look at those and describe those straight back to people because, one, it might give us a false sense that, well, that's an example that we would fund when we might not. So I suppose the easiest way to think about it is something like digitization, and looking at digitization maybe as a test bed. They're not items that are so systems are test beds with digitization on it and buying the systems to go with it. Not something that we see a lot of or have a lot of in the system, and probably things that are not as popular is maybe one word. So I'm I'm trying again not to give a specific answer to that because it might be misleading. But if you want to come back to me, Liam, I can have that conversation with you later. So next one, I'm a PI in 2 centres. I have a piece of equipment which is applicable to both centres. Can I associate with both centres? Yes, you can, but please make sure that, well, it comes off the quota of one of the two. And I suppose I would pick the one that is the most obvious one for that. Under the collaboration section, put down obviously that it is useful to two, and in the list of companies, again, if it's useful across the two, that's an opportunity to put more down. Does the equipment have to be off the shelf, or will proposals for custom built equipment be considered? Yes, but I suppose the issue with custom built is then just the lead time. There needs to be a realistic lead time on it, and also it's custom to whom, and it's just about how do you define it. So if custom built you mean if by custom built you mean taking a suite of existing things and putting together as something else, yes, completely custom as into one-off. Again, I'd like to see a description maybe of exactly what you mean to be able to answer that question more reliably. Am I circulating the slides? This presentation of this recording will go up on the website. So if you go into the Enterprise Ireland websites for either technology gateways or technology centres, you'll have seen a link to this webinar to register. We'll be replacing that with a link to this recording. So as I said, I'll wait along and see if there's any more questions now for a minute or two. Okay, well, look, folks, as I said, there don't appear to be any more questions coming in, which is fine. I hope this was useful. Sorry. Do you feel the timeline for implementation or adoption within companies is realistic? I'm not sure what you mean there, Liam. Can you expand on that? Do you mean within 18 months or 2 years or? Yes, you mentioned 9 to 12 months. Look, that was just an example I was trying to give. Ideally, this is something that should be, by the time you get it, implementable within a period of time. So, I mean, if we're funding something now and industry aren't going to need it for 3 to 4 years, why would we fund it now? So I suppose there has to be some short-term adoption for this. It might not be an immediate adoption short term, but there has to be, and that's why we've put in the three companies. There has to be at least the three companies who are going to use this in the short term. The 9 to 12 months was based on the fact that it typically takes about 9 to 12 months for you to be able to apply, receive the grant, and even once you've received the grant, I suppose, tender for these, get them, install them, and commission them. So COVID hasn't helped. So if you get funding under this, it's probably realistic to assume that it would be next summer that you would have this equipment. So in the meantime, you're looking for those companies. So folks, I propose maybe we will leave it there. As I said, there aren't any other questions coming in. If you do have stuff, again, please email me and I'll get back to you on that. But other than that, thank you for your attendance today, and I wish you the best of luck with your applications. Take care.